Okay, we're done with part 1, the problem statement, and now we're moving on to part 2 of the 7-part series on the problem of multiplying two numbers together, the sequence example problem. And this is going to be the output list. I have provided on the lab downloads for the lab the categories that you see on the screen now: output list, input list, pseudocode, test plan, VBA code, and captured screen. And we will be putting in all parts of that. You will be doing that this term for each of your labs, and I will be doing it here as an example for this problem. The output list is first instead of the input list, which you might think would be more appropriate, because in designing anything you need to know what the output is supposed to be before you proceed. You can't really design a solution or come up with a solution for a problem if you don't know what the outcome is supposed to be like. An architect would not try to design a building if he didn't have talked to the user or the customer and asked them what kind of building they wanted. So in this case, it's very important to first be able to define the output list. If you can't do that, you can't proceed at all. And you need more meetings probably with users or whoever so that you can eventually get an output list that makes sense. So in our case, the verbiage above will serve as the first meeting or the only meeting with the user. If we come up with questions during this process, we could meet with the user again in a second or third meeting. In a very complicated problem, you may meet with the user 5, 6, 12 times, who knows. But for our purposes, we're ready to start here, and the output list we already know is going to be the two numbers that the user has entered. We're going to regurgitate those, and we're also going to give them the product of those two numbers. So I need to come up with some variable names that will stand in for that information, that data. And since this is a generic application, it isn't tied to any industry, I'm going to come up with variable names which are going to be fairly generic. But if you were doing this in a real environment, you may come up with something more specific to the application. And if you put those names into your program, eventually it would make your program more self-documenting. Another person could read it and more or less make sense out of it. Whereas if you pick a variable name that's too generic, then the application isn't as easily understood. So for the first two numbers that the user is going to enter, I'm going to enter num1 and num2. And for the product, we'll use product. Okay, notice that the first letter of each word used in making up the variable name is uppercase. It makes it easier to read and know where the words, be able to read it, you know where the words are beginning and ending. That will be our standard this term, so please make sure that you do that. This concludes part 2 of the 7-part series on the sequence